Good morning. So I have my grumpy mug today because that is the mood that I was in this morning when I woke up and found my freshly scrubbed bathtub desecrated by one of the furry beings that lives in my house, who apparently did not enjoy his dinner last night.
What's desecrate mean?
In other words, to explain it to my child who has just asked me what desecrated means, I woke up to cat vomit in the tub. There we go. So anyways, so this is my third entry, which this is going to be kind of a continuation of my second one when I started talking about my panic attacks, because I realized that I didn't even really share how I got rid of my panic attacks. So because I've really honestly have not had a full-blown panic attack in several years, and they used to be daily, several times a day. So I'm just going to kind of share how I got to that point. So I had talked before about how when I was growing up, there were signs of an anxiety disorder that, of course, were overlooked because people just didn't talk about that back then. And it's not easily picked up on. It's easily mistaken for something else. So nobody caught it the whole time I was growing up. And I was performing. So why the heck would I have panic attacks when I can get out there on stage and perform, or perform a musical instrument in front of an audience? So it wasn't picked up on at all. And I really didn't even I didn't have my first actual panic attack until I was 21. Yes, 21. I had to think about it a minute there. Up until that point, the closest to having a panic attack I ever had was when I was doing choral work, and I would sing in a choir, and we would be standing for a long period of time, and I would, everybody tells you don't lock your knees so you don't pass out. And so I was paranoid I was going to pass out. So there's a few times that I actually had to leave, skedaddle out of the performance, because I was going to pass out, because I kept thinking I locked my knees. But I didn't realize that I was having this big old internal panic attack about not passing out, not locking my knees. So anyways, my child is playing with the screen. Oh, she's pointing out things in my shot. Okay. So I am in my dining room, and I'm not sure what morning I'm posting this, but I'm filming this on the last day of summer, first day of fall. So this is the switch over time. This is the end of my summer decor. I don't know if you can see, I have a lot of seashore beachy stuff because that's what I love. However, I did have tiny little shell creatures that actually belonged to my grandparents that were in that little housey thing back there that another furry beast in the house knocked over. So they're actually laying all over, and I have not fixed it yet, and this is all torn apart over here, so I haven't put it together. The wall behind me actually is eventually going to become a family gallery. This is my dining room, and I host Christmas here and any other family events. A little thing about my home: I live in what used to be my grandparents' home, and my children are actually the 5th generation to live in this home, because my grandparents bought it, and of course my dad and my aunt were raised here. And then when my grandfather was very ill and passed away, my grandmother's mother, my great-grandmother, moved in with her because she had lost my great-grandfather. So I grew up coming here every day after school with my Nana and my great-grandmother, who I called Ma. And I was very, very fortunate to have Ma in my life until I was 12 years old. And I wish back then that I had been able to appreciate every moment with her that I do now as an adult. Because when you're a kid, you take for granted. I thought everybody had their grandma living across the street from them and their great grandma. And I did not realize how special it was to actually have her in my life. And she has, I think, 17 grandkids. And I got to see her every day. So I'm sorry, I'm getting a text from my sister who's sick. Tell her yes. So anyways, I may have to edit. I may have to do some editing on this one, actually. Probably. And I don't know, there may be a whole thing of outtakes someday. I can call it my blooper reel. Wow, I actually had to do an edit there. A little few interruptions. This is what happens when you don't film, or I'm sorry, when you film without everybody in the house gone. Very rare. I really seriously have less than an hour a day where there's nobody else in the house with me. So, or interrupting me or vying for my time. So, anyways, time of day that I could do this, and now all these interruptions coming in. So,
you're talking about house and living.
I was talking about house, living in this house. So, so my great grandmother lived here till she was 94 years old with my grandmother. And then after my grandmother passed away, it was decided that my family would move into this house. And so my children actually mark the 5th generation to live in this home. So it's kind of a special thing. I'm still kind of living on top of a lot of my grandparents' things, and there's not some things I can change, some things I can't change, so I'm kind of incorporating. So actually, when I get my fall decorating done, I'll maybe give you a little tour of my house and how of the clean rooms of my house. So it'll be maybe 2. And so I will, actually, I can hold you up high and the mess can be down low and you would never know. You don't even know what I'm hiding underneath me right here. All right, so I've gotten off on a tangent. I'm going to have to go back to my panic attacks. So my very first panic attack happened when I was away in college. I signed up for a speech class because I thought, I'm used to performing. Like, this is going to be an easy A. I had to get up and give my first speech. And for some reason, they called the person before me. And all of a sudden, I was hit with this feeling that I'm going to pass out and get sick all at the same time. And so I left the classroom and went to the bathroom, and everything sounded like it was in a tunnel. I started losing my vision. Everything started to go black. I didn't completely pass out, but I was vomiting in the bathroom and pretty much on the bathroom floor and could not get up, and started thinking, what is wrong with me? I must be sick. So I went back. I had to reschedule my speech. I think I eventually did get up there and give my speech because I remember being in front of the class giving it, but it's very, I have like glimpses of memory of that because I would like go from panicking and kind of blacking out. And then I did give my speech, but I ended up actually dropping the class and I couldn't figure out what is wrong with me. So that's when I went to the health center on campus and talked to them, and they set me up with one of the psychologists, and it was determined that I'd had a panic attack. Well, I was continuing to have them. I was in a lot of lecture classes where there was like 200 something kids in the class, and we were in a big auditorium, and I would be sitting in the middle of a lecture taking notes, and all of a sudden that feeling would come over me of, I got to get out of here. I'm going to pass out. And I would have to leave the classroom and walk around. And after walking around the fresh air for a little bit, I was okay. And so I'd go back into the classroom, but it would continually happen. So that's when I first started seeking treatment for it. And I did it mostly just by therapy. We were just kind of trying to figure out what was going on. When I came home on break, I went and I saw my my regular doctor that I had been going to, family practitioner, and I'm lucky that she specializes in female medicine and panic disorder. So she helped me get through that. And then when I came home from school, I moved home from that college and started commuting to another college, is when we discovered that I actually needed to go on medication to stop the panic attacks just so I could function in my daily life. I was on Zoloft at that time, and they would also have me take Xanax for when I had to perform or if I had to get up in front of a group. I would take a Xanax beforehand. I did not like the feeling of Xanax, and especially coming off of Xanax, I would get these weird shakes where my whole body almost like convulsing, but I would just uncontrollably shake coming off of it, and I didn't like it. So I tried not to take it very often, which meant I stopped performing. Very rarely did it. And then finally, I kind of had a little bit of a break and kind of stabilized out a little bit. And then I got married in 1999. It was actually my second marriage. The first one was kind of a disaster with panic attacks and finishing school, and that's a whole nother blog entry. But I got married in 1999. I did great going into the wedding. There's a cat crying at the door. I was on Xanax the day of my wedding, but I felt completely fine. I was calm. I discovered that if I kept my blood sugar up, I was doing well. That would be my child running through, letting the cat in. So I was doing okay. That would be a cat. That's Olaf. That's one of my fur babies. I'm very distracted now. Hi. Okay, so I started taking medication for it because the summer after I got married, I became agoraphobic. I could not leave my house. I had basically a few blocks that I had to drive to go to work at the dance studio, and I had never had a panic attack at the dance studio. All of a sudden, I was having them when I'm driving. I could barely make it there. If there was a red light, I was in trouble because I'd sit there and just that feeling would come over me and I'd start panicking. I'm going to pass out while I'm driving. Everybody's kind of different when they have a panic attack. For me, I actually would become like deathly pale, and which made me fully believe that I was going to pass out because obviously I have no blood in my head. And I would start to hear in a tunnel, and my vision would start to close in, and I'd start to see black spots everywhere, and I would start to kind of cold sweats. And of course my heart is racing at that time, and I seriously felt like I wanted to, well, I didn't want to, but I was going to die. It hit me in grocery stores. Pretty much everywhere I went, I was starting to have panic attacks. So that summer, I started taking Paxil, and it helped me a lot. I also started doing counseling. I kind of winged it through the next few years. I had to go off Paxil when I got pregnant with my first child, and I would still take Xanax occasionally when I had to. I had a really difficult time with my pregnancy with the panic attacks. The hormones really kicked in. It set me into preterm labor when I was 4 months along, and I ended up doing the last 5 months of my pregnancy on bed rest and on a medication called Procardia. They could not give me the normal medication that they give women for preterm labor because it would have aggravated my panic attacks even more. So I was given Procardia, which was a blood pressure medication, but the side effect was it would stop uterine contractions because I actually had gone into having contractions in my 4th month. And it was very scary. I had actually had two or three miscarriages before that. one actually right before I got pregnant with my daughter. And I was very nervous during the whole pregnancy. Another reason I was really nervous is because my mother had lost my brother. He was full term, 2 weeks overdue, and it was just like a freak accident that happened in the womb where the umbilical cord wrapped around his neck, and it was so tight it actually suffocated him in the womb. And I was only 4 at the time. I didn't really understand what was going on. As I got older and when I was pregnant, when my child was very, very active towards the end of the pregnancy, I would start to panic because my brother was very active in the womb. My mom had described it as him somersaulting, and he was so active that that's how his cord had gotten tangled. So when I went overdue with my first child, 2 weeks, the doctor knew I was just freaking out. I was just freaking out. I had been on bed rest in preterm labor. The minute it was okay for me to actually deliver, they took me off the medication, off the Procardia, and off the bed rest. And then she didn't want to come out. So I carried 4 more weeks because they let me go off 2 weeks before my due date. I carried an extra 4 weeks, and I would start labor and stop labor. So I would start and stop off and on. They'd send me to the hospital, and then they'd send me home. And finally, he told me that if she didn't come by a certain date, that they were going to induce me. And I actually ended up going into labor and then having her on the day that they were going to induce me. So she was 2 weeks late. And it was really difficult because of the panic attacks. Now, after I had her, when all the other hormones kicked in for breastfeeding, I really saw a decline in them and really didn't battle them too much. Right when I weaned my oldest child, I was already pregnant with my second child. And because we were aware of what the pregnancy hormones did, I was doing a lot of therapy through that and just educating myself. Also, when I was on bed rest with my first child, I had nothing better to do but to go on the internet and research panic attacks. And we discovered that one of the things that is a trigger for me is NutraSweet, or I think it's called, is it aspartame? 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 I am trying to remember how you actually pronounce it now.
Aspartame.
I think it's aspartame. It is the main ingredient in NutraSweet, which came out in the 80s when I was a kid, and it was all the rage. They put it in everything because they made everything sugar-free. That's when a lot of people started discovering that it's not kind of a good thing for you. And I went through my cupboard and was amazed at how many things actually contained that. So I cut that completely out of my diet and saw a huge improvement in that sense. So I have to really ingredient watch what I have. And I don't let my kids have it because they also have suffered with anxiety disorders and panic attacks. So that's a whole nother vlog though about my kids and theirs. So anyways, came back to how I got out over this. I eventually saw this infomercial. And if there's an infomercial on TV, obviously I must have this product. It was an infomercial from the Midwest Institute, and it was called Attacking Anxiety and Depression. And I will look up the link and put it down below. I actually haven't looked at their link in a really long time. It's been years. But anyways, they had this infomercial out and was talking about depression and anxiety, and I suffer from both. However, it was really pricey. It was hundreds of dollars. And so I just kept thinking, oh, it sounds like it would help me, but there's no way. I can't afford that. And I didn't know that my Nana purchased the program for me. She saw it and purchased it and gave it to me. And at that time that I did the program, it was all audio CDs and a workbook. And I knew she paid a lot of money for it. And I was kind of skeptical as to how is this going to help me? I've been dealing with this for, I think at that point, going on 20 years. So I took it to my doctor and I had her look it over. And she said, this is exactly what you need because it is cognitive behavioral therapy. And I thought, great. So I was still on medication at the time for my panic attacks to kind of control them. And I would go on and off because I didn't stay on my medication when I was pregnant. I would go back on after I weaned. When I weaned my youngest child, I went back on the medication. So anyways, I started using the program and it worked. It really worked. It was just all about educating myself of what my body is actually physically doing during a panic attack and the brain activity that's going on and things that can trigger it, that can make your body respond that way. We discovered also I have very low blood pressure. And when my blood pressure and blood sugar both dip is when I start to get the feeling of going to pass out and I'm going to have a panic attack. Now I know what that feeling is. So I carry glucose tablets with me and I'm just aware. And if I feel it, I'm like, oh, that's what it is. And I'll pop a glucose tablet or in my case, grab a cup of coffee because the meds that I've been on actually kind of turned me into a little bit of a zombie. That's when I started drinking coffee. And it was because I literally would be driving my child to school in the morning. We have about, at the time I had a 10-minute drive to get to her school and I would be fighting falling asleep at the wheel and then picking her up in the afternoon. It's 3:00 in the afternoon. I'm fighting falling asleep at the wheel. So I started drinking coffee and my body got very addicted to it. And that's a whole nother health issue. So anyways, I got through my panic attacks by using this program. However, at the time, I wasn't performing anymore. And my regret is that my Nana never got to hear me perform again in this life. My Nana passed away and I finally decided that I needed to show her that she got her money's worth and I performed at her services. That was the first time I had performed since 1999. She passed away in 2011. So I actually got up and spoke about what she had done for me in helping me heal from my panic attacks and that I dedicated it to her. I played the swan because the swan is a very elegant, gorgeous bird and that's how I think of my Nana. Yes. So that's Olaf. He agrees. So that is actually how I got through my panic attacks and I've been doing really well ever since. I have been off of the Paxil. I have been off Xanax for a long time. There was a little period of time where because of depression, I needed to go on something a little heavier. I'm actually on depression meds right now. And I am on Ativan, not for panic attacks, but for stress level. I don't really have a panic attack, but my stress level will get so through the roof at times that it will trigger a stress response where I just check out. And so I have to keep an eye on that. It's actually been quite a while since I've actually had to take it. So that's how I did it. I'm hoping this is helpful to some of you that are suffering from panic attacks. Like I said, I'll put the link down below. I'll look it up, kind of see if there's anything new. I'm sure they have revised and revamped the program since then, but it worked for me. I cannot thank my Nana enough for purchasing that for me because it gave me my life back pretty much. And I've been able to get up on stage and talk in front of an audience full of people and feel completely calm in the process and actually enjoy doing it. So I guess this will be until the next one. Have a good day and I'll see you soon.